Good morning, Rabotai. Welcome back to Breakfast in the Class. Breakfast in the Class today sponsored by Emmanuel Zara, dedicated in honor of Dr. Morris Shama. Thank you for all the Torah you've taught me. Congratulations on the upcoming Aliyah. My love to you and Linda, we will miss you. Also, Breakfast in the Class, I dedicated loving memory to Nishmat, Max Shalom, Mordechai ben Mazal on the 1 year of his yortzeit. He loved Torah and mitzvot and had an unwavering emunah in Hashem by his wife and children. We miss him tremendously. Breakfast in the Class also dedicated loving memory to Nishmat, Faraj Goel ben Batya on what would have been his 82nd birthday. Happy birthday in Shamayim. We love and miss you forever. Love, Miriam Kashanian. Also dedicated by Serena Shalom in honor of her parents Nadine and David Shalom for continuing to bring love of the Torah into our home. In dedicated and loving memory to Nishmat Meir ben Avraham Anolad min Sarah, we will always remember his strength, warm character, kind heart, and devotion to his family. May his neshama have the highest aliyah in Shamayim by his daughter Sarah in honor of Rosh Chodesh Adar. The year of Breakfast in the Class is dedicated and loving memory to Nishmat Ruth Ofali Bat Adela, sponsored by her family. And the learning for this week is dedicated by the Torah Center Gold donors, the Aronow family, in loving memory of Yosef Mordechai ben Yisrael Haim Vechana, and as well dedicated for the speedy and complete refuah shlema of Nisim ben Sacha and Eliyahu Shmuel Mazal Fortuné, and for the continued health of Chana bat Sima Fega. My friends, we also want to wish a tremendous Mabruka Mazal Tov to the entire Carey and senior families on the special bar mitzvah that we had here this morning, the bar mitzvah for Ben Carey, who read so beautifully. Benjamin, you were a superstar. We're all so proud of you, and we know you're going to do fantastic things in the future as a young man budding into an amazing adult. Okay, let's begin. I want to quote to you something that we find at the end of the parasha. We talked all through the parasha about the format for building the Mishkan. And then, after we talk about all the vessels in the Mishkan, we actually talk about the building of the Mishkan itself, the walls. It tells us about the walls, which are called the krashim. Those walls are assembled around in this basic rectangle to be able to form the body of the Mishkan, of the temple itself. And the Torah tells us very beautifully on these walls that there was something that they needed to do in order to be able to ensure that the walls would stay up. There was poles that were attached to the back of the walls all along the outside, and those were called the bariach or the brichim. So those things, those poles, they made sure that the walls would stay up. If anyone here has ever put up a sukkah, and you know those support beams that you put on the outside of the walls, attached to the walls to be able to give the walls stability, that's exactly what we're talking about over here. Okay, the only thing is, then the pasuk says something a little bit different. The pasuk says, "V'habriach hatichon b'toch hakerashim mavriach min hakatzeh el hakatzeh." This pole, the middle pole, the center pole, bariach hatichon b'toch hakerashim, was on the walls from one side to the other. Now Chizkuni points out that if you take a look, you'll see that what it says over here is a little bit different than the birichim that were mentioned before, than the poles that were put on the outside. And the ones that before it talked about the birichim that were put chamishak lekerashet tzela mishkan. You put the five poles on the walls, but over here it says something a little bit different. It says v'abriach hatichon b'toch hakerashim. The middle pole was not just placed in the middle on the outside in terms of space from top to bottom, but rather the pole actually went through the middle of the keresh itself. Whereas the other ones were between the gold and the kerashim. It says this one was betoch ovi hakeresh, was in the thickness of the wall itself. So this one pole was running right through the middle of the wall to the thickness of the wall itself. And that's why it provided this unbelievable support, more than even the birichim themselves from the outside. Our rabbis tell us something even more beautiful, that this bariach hatichon, which was 30 amot on a side, right, was so special because, why? You had 30 amot on one side, 30 amot on the other, and the width was 10 amot. So together, what you wound up having was 70 amot of bariach hatichon. Now, what's so interesting to me, more than anything else, okay, is that the Chazal tell us that this bariach, it was not pieces, rather, benes, as a miracle, it grew in one piece. So this one piece of wood, of atzeh shitim of cedar wood, was over 30 amot long. 30 amot is roughly 60 feet long, okay? So it was all made up of one piece. Say Chazal that it was a special miracle that this wood, the way that it grew in a way where it was derech gidulo and it never fell. That's how it grew. They didn't attach it, they didn't use glue. It was one long piece. And says Rabbeinu Bahye that Yaakov Avinu said to them, please take the Bariach HaTichon and take it with you out when you leave Egypt. You're going to need it. They didn't know why their grandfather's telling them to bring a pole with them into the desert. What do they need this for? Are they trying to reach a high shelf for a book, for a library? Is it something, that they have in these houses? You have to open up the top window, there's a long pole. What do they need a 60-foot pole for? They hadn't yet been given the command of the Mishkan. And yet, they brought that Bariach HaTichon out with them. Says Rabbeinu Bahye, something unbelievable. The measurement of space that was needed to be covered by the Bariach HaTichon, which is the two walls and the back wall as well, that space, you know how much space that was? Together, it was 70 amot. And he says that's why Yaakov Avinu said to them, take the Bariach HaTichon with you. What does the number 70 have to do with Yaakov Avinu? As we know, Yaakov Avinu, when he came down to Egypt, how many people were the Jewish people? They were 70 souls. So there's some sort of connection here with the Bariach HaTichon, which, again, remember the walls are in different directions. So the longest piece it could be was 30 amot. The idea that this thing was done in the way that it grew, that it was not patched together or pieced together, but it was one long piece. And this miraculous wood was brought out with them into the desert. Those 70 souls that Yaakov Avinu brought in the beginning of the exile to Egypt, Yaakov Avinu said, I need you to bring them out with you. And now, how was that going to happen? How were they going to bring them out with them? Well, one way is that some of the Shivatim, we know, the Shivatim's bones were brought out with them from Egypt all the way back to the land of Israel. We talk about the Atzmot Yosef, but we know that the other brothers, the Shivatim, also their bones were brought back to Eretz Israel for burial. So the Shivatim's bones were taken out. Is that what Yaakov was communicating? And the answer is, there's something here unbelievable. To me, it's almost a powerful expression. This atzeh shitim, this thing that was not pieced or cobbled together, but it was one piece, and that was how it was in its natural form. Yaakov Avinu said, the soul, the essence, the idea of the 70 souls that came to Egypt, ones that grew up in the Kedusha of Eretz Israel, ones that were raised in the place that Abraham and Yitzchak had sanctified, people that prayed at the graves of their grandfathers in Eretz Israel, Sadiqim of measure like you can't begin to imagine. Those were the people who came to Egypt in the first place. Says Yaakov Avinu, I need you to take that out with you. Now, of course, those people were no longer there. So Yaakov, in order to help them remember, he said, take these poles, the atzeh shitim, take them out with you. Take 70 with you. 70 came in. 70 needs to leave with you as well. And where do these poles go? They are betoch ovi hakeresh. They are in the width of the wall. They are the support system for the walls of the Jewish sanctuary, of the Jewish home. My friends, a person can build a beautiful home. A person can build a beautiful life. And I don't just mean the actual physical home. They can build the attitudes. They can build the worldview. They can build the values and the ideas and the dreams and the goals and the red lines. A person can build that for their family. But ultimately, what will help those walls in difficult times when the walls themselves of the Mishkan was so heavy? What will help walls that are so heavy stand up? There needs to be a Bariach Tichon, a penetrating support beam, a beam that runs right through the middle of all the walls, that keeps it solid, that keeps it together, that grew naturally. Yaakov Avinu said, the spirit of the 70 souls that came, that Kedusha needs to be the underpinning of the walls of your home. Now, I need to say something that I've had to say quite a few times in the past, but I feel like today, it's a little bit more obvious than it used to be before. And what do I mean by that? When we talk about the walls of a Jewish home, What is the function of the walls of a Jewish home? For many people, the walls, we think of the walls of our house, that's what keeps me warm. The walls of the house, that's what keeps the heat out or the cold out. My air conditioning, my heating is insulated. The walls have insulation. That's how we think of the walls of a Jewish sanctuary, of a Jewish home. But the purpose of the walls of a Jewish home is not just to make sure that you're warm or you're cold. The purpose of those walls is to keep things that are not supposed to be out. There's a famous little children's tale, a fable. It's the fable of the three pigs. The three pigs each build themselves a home. And the first person builds his home out of straw. The second builds his home out of wood. And the third builds his home out of bricks. Now when the big bad wolf comes, and he huffs and he puffs, he blows the wind, with the wind of his breath, he blows down the straw house. And then he blows down the house made of wood. And the two brothers are forced to run to their third brother's house. And the wolf comes, and he huffed and he puffed, but he could not blow the house down. Because the walls of the house, which were built with solidity, which were built to be able to withstand the intrusions of the big bad wolf, actually held, and their lives were saved. The primary function of the walls of your house, of a Jewish home, is not only the values that it has inside of it, but in terms of the fact that it isolates and that it holds the street's views at bay. Our world has gone crazy. Now, it used to be that when I was talking to a crowd like this, I had to convince everybody that this is something that was important. Am I so different than the secular American street? You know, I also went to school, I also went to high school, I also went to college, I also in the working world. What's the difference? I'm a proud American. And you know what? A person should be proud to be part of this country and the values that it holds dear. But my friends, the values of the streets today are not the values that we have in our homes. And the question we have to ask ourselves is, are the walls of our home solid enough to be able to withstand the big bad wolf outside? Now, as a rabbi, I have to be careful. I can't cry literally, pardon the pun, wolf too many times. But I can see this pasuk about the Bariach Tichon, about a piece of wood that stretches through the walls of the home. What is this wood? It's atzeh shittim. The word shittim, which means cedar wood. Shittim has the word in it of shita. What does shita mean? Shita means an opinion. When you have a machloket, you have two shitot. Each one sees things in a different way. This wood is a wood of opinions. And the opinions of the atzeh shittim, that were the Bariach HaTichon, the center beam, the support beam, you know what made the walls of the Mishkan keep the lack of holiness from permeating its holy space? Etz chaimi lama chazikim ba. It is a tree of life for those that hold onto it. When a person makes the tree, the atzeh shittim, their Jewish opinion, when they make the Torah opinion be the beam that runs through the walls of their house, that when I make decisions for my home, how do I make decisions for my home? What do I think when I make decisions for my home? Like as an example, you go to a Jewish house and you go into the dining room, and right next to the table, there's a sink for netilat yadayim. I don't know that there's anything more beautiful than that. Let me explain. I don't mean that the sink is beautiful with your beautiful sink and it's very designer and you turn it on and water runs down like a sheet of water and the sink is not a sink but it's a shelf and the water goes down and it's, I don't know, all sorts of beautiful things that people are doing. I don't mean that the sink is beautiful architecturally. I mean that when a person thought, I'm going to eat in this place, what did he think to himself? He thought, I need a place next to my table where my family could do netilat yadayim. We've learned about netilat yadayim, And we know that that process of nitilat yadayim is like sanctifying the hands. And we're going to read very soon about the shiur, that the Kohanim, when they would go to do the work in the Mishkan, they would purify their hands and their feet. And our Chachamim tell us in the Zohar that the purification of our hands and feet in nitilat yadayim is equivalent to the preparation and the purity of the Kohen. A Jewish table which has all the foods on it, when you make your berachot, it's like your foods are elevated to the status of a korban. My friends, if that's how you see your dining room, a place of the utmost physicality, where you're just eating food, if you see food and you think Kedusha, then your support beams are doing their job. If you think to yourself, how many doors do I have? How many mezuzot do I need? And if I spend so much money to get the best of every single accessory, the finish in my house is amazing. Even the plugs, the outlets on the bottom, I didn't go for the cheap outlets, I went for those fancy ones. The ones that are just a circle in the wood or in the marble. Beautiful. Gorgeous. If you bought the nicest house, and the nicest doorknobs, and the nicest carpet, and the nicest railing for the stairs, you could buy the nicest mezuzot, and don't ask for the cheapest ones. That's Bariach HaTichon. That's the support beam of this wood, of the opinions of Torah. What is the Torah's opinion for a person's bedroom? What is the Torah's opinion for privacy? What is the Torah's opinion for tziniut? What is the Torah's opinion for creating spaces where people want to sit together? You know, in a Torah home, the family is together. They love each other. In a Torah home, you don't make the living room giant with a massive TV and a tiny dining room. Because a Torah home, a home of Avraham Avinu, is a home that has guests. And if your family bizor fits around the table, that's not a Torah dining room. Are you understanding where I'm going with this? If you have a home, and there's no library in the home, and there's no Jewish books in the home. By the way, I don't care if they're in English. But you gotta have books, Jewish books in the home. You ever bored in your house, and you just pick up whatever? If you're in the shower or in the bathroom, all of a sudden you're reading the ingredients, that go into the shampoo. You're reading this biggest stupidity. When a person's bored, what do? Some people are scrolling. Some people, if they have a TV, are flipping through the channels. But what if you had, in your coffee table, what if you had, on your wall, there's a beautiful Tehillim book that they did, giant coffee table book. Amazing. That's having support beams of your walls supporting a Torah environment in the confines of your home. My friends, if you have a roof, the Torah tells you have a mitzvah from the Torah. A high space needs to have a fence built around it. It's called ma'akeh. These are laws of a home which is girded, which is strengthened by Torah. If you have poles that support a Torah house, does a Torah house have lashon hara at its tables? Does a Torah house have things that are inappropriate in it? When a person starts to think that these walls, this family, this tradition, it was given to us by none other than Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. I'll give you a little example. Some people, they have some very special prized possessions. I know someone who has the tefillin of the Tasher Rebbe. Unbelievable. God bless him. And actually, he told me, if you know someone who needs to put on the tefillin to pray to Hashem because someone's not well or they need shidduch, he says, talk to me, I'll arrange to get them the tefillin on a condition that they make a donation to tzedakah. I don't care what tzedakah, but you give a donation to tzedakah. Unbelievable. What a precious gift. The tefillin of the Tasher Rebbe. Other people have the snuff box of some great Hasidic master from Poland, Russia, or Lithuania. Other people have the Gemara of this one. Rabbi Abragamov has through his wife, he has the Megillah of the Ben Ish Chai, the one that he used himself. She's a granddaughter of the Ben Ish Chai, and every year on Purim in the Bet Knesset, we auction off the right to use the Megillah, to follow the Megillah reading of the Ben Ish Chai. We auction it off in this Beit Knesset in the evening and in the morning, and the money goes to support the Torah and the Chesed and the Torah and the Tefillot that come from this Beit Knesset. My friends, precious possessions. But I need you to understand, if you met someone that had something like that, they had an object that was used by Chacham Ovadia, his chair. If you brought it to your house, Chacham Ovadia's chair, what would you do with it? Would you let anyone sit on it? Of course not. You'd cover it in glass, you'd have red rope around it. This is the chair of Chacham Ovadia. Well, Yaakov Avinu gave the Jewish people these poles. But what he communicated to them, in giving them poles that were exactly 70 amot, says Rabbeinu Bahye, was he was telling them, I'm giving you something from a tzaddik. I'm giving you something, it's precious, hold on to it. You're going to be here for a long time, but take it with you when you leave. When you move, when you fall, rise again and remember, I come from the 70 and I'm going to leave with the 70. I will be what my grandparents were. It was only a couple days ago that I saw a man in the Beit Knesset that I had the privilege to visit him in his home. In his home, he pulled off the shelf a sefer, a book that was written by his grandfather. He said, Rabbi, look, my grandfather wrote the sefer. He was such a big rabbi. And he was so proud of this book, and he wanted to give me a copy of the book that his grandfather wrote because he was such a big rabbi. I said to him, thank you so much. What a special gift. I'll enjoy it, I'll read from it, I'll learn from it. But then I said to him, your grandfather was a great rabbi. His grandfather was a great rabbi. It's a family that has such an illustrious lineage. Maybe one of your kids should pick up that stick. Don't tell me who your grandfather was. Tell me who your grandkids are going to be. Could you imagine in the time of Mashiach, you'll have the ability to take one of your kids to your grandfather and said, the line did not end with me. Hundreds of years of rabbis. And Baruch Hashem, I'm a good Jew. Doing really well. Parnasah, tzedakah, prayer, amazing. But all those years of Rabbanim, and it dies with me? 70 came in. 70 need to come out. Take it with you. Let that be the underpinnings of your home. I will end with this one idea. And this one idea is that I believe that there is a center beam to every Jewish home. And now there's other birichim, like we said, on the outside, top one, bottom one. Then there's a middle one, and the middle one is different than the top one and the bottom one. Those are support, but they're on the outside. There's one thing that runs through the very middle of the wall itself. And my question is, if you had to describe the strongest midah, the strongest positive character trait that defined, that supported, that held up your family, what would you call that center beam? Torah, tefillah, kindness. Because the Mishnah says, Al shilosha devarim ha'olam omed. There's three things that keep something standing. Ala Torah, on Torah, al ha'abodah, and on the service of God, understood to mean tefillah, understood to mean prayer. Ve'al gemilut chasadim, and on acts of kindness. My friends, avodah could mean one of those three. Excuse me, the Abariyah Chatichon could mean one of those three. Maybe that's the underpinning of your family. If you don't know what it is, get to work. Start identifying it. It's the greatest thing that you'll give to your grandchildren, is the beam that defines what this family is. That when they are tested, and when that wall gets heavy, and when things are seeping in, and you want to be able to be strong in your identity, in your beliefs, in your values, in a changing world, what is the thing you rely on that you keep coming back to? What is that midah? It's not only Torah, avodah, prayer, and gimilut chasadim, kindness. I believe that the word avodah is a little bit wider than that. Avodah means prayer because the Gemara says, Ezohi avodah shebalev. What does it mean? Work of the heart. Havi omezu tefillah. That refers to tefillah. But the Mishnah over here says avodah. Avodah means the service of God. When a person is striving to be humble, that's not Torah, that's not gimilut chasadim, but it sure is avodah. Difficult work. Striving to be humble. Is that your midah? Is that your support beam? Everybody's got to have one. Without it, the other beams can't do the job. And it needs to run through every decision. Everything needs to be held up to that character trait. May Hashem bless us, not only to find it, but to be able to implement it and to have it be part of every conversation and the center point around which our family rallies to be able to find its way and to always be the very best that we can be. Shabbat Shalom, Chodesh Tov, Mishinichnas Adar, Marbim B'Simcha.